Lesson 1 of Chapter 4, The Early People of Texas. How did geography influence the way the early people of Texas lived? We will learn why the early people of Texas were nomads. I will learn about the changes in technology that changed their lifestyle from a nomadic life to settling in one area.
The early people of Texas. Essential questions. How does geography influence the way people live? How does technology change the way people live? What makes a culture unique? The story matters. This woman symbolizes the important role that women played among the Caddo, one of the Native American groups who lived in what is now Texas. Women farmed the land, growing the corn that was the Caddo's chief crop. Family relationships were traced through the mother's line. Women made most of the pottery used by the Caddo. Caddo pottery is considered among the finest examples of Native American pottery. At community dances, even today, the first dance is always the turkey dance, performed by the women.
This is a picture of cave images of hunting. These are the routes of the first Americans. The early people of Texas. In 1500, seven major Native American groups living in Texas. These groups were divided up into smaller bands or villages. By 1776, the Jumano and Apache peoples had been pushed south and west due to the arrival of new groups, such as the Comanche and Wichita. Today, three Native American groups are officially recognized by the state of Texas. So, Alabama Coshada is the tribe that's near us up in the Livingston area. The first Americans, guiding question. How did the first people reach the Americas? Before humans came to Texas, they had come to the Americas. What brought them to the Americas? Since these ancient peoples left no records, how do scientists even know how or why they came? Thousands of years ago, Earth's climate turned very cold. Large amounts of water formed vast ice sheets called glaciers. These glaciers covered much of the northern hemisphere. So much water was trapped in ice that the sea levels fell. They may have fallen by several hundred feet. Falling sea levels turned some areas of the ocean floor into dry land. One such area of dry land was located between Alaska and Asia. A land bridge formed there and connected the two masses of land. Question 1 up here. When you get your study slides, you'll do this. What was one effect of falling temperatures on Earth thousands of years ago? And it's pointing to the answer. Migrating animals moved across the land bridge in search of food. Nomads, who were people who moved from place to place, hunted these animals for food. As a result, the nomads crossed from Asia to North America on the land bridge. They were the first humans in the Americas. Eventually, they spread east across North America and south all the way to South America. The land bridge opened about 36,000 BC. Over the years, many humans made the journey across it. After about 20,000 years, however, the climate warmed again. Glaciers melted and sea levels rose once more. A body of water that is now called the Bering Strait covered the land bridge. It could no longer be used to cross from Asia to the Americas. And what is a nomad? You put that here. Today, how do we know about the movements of people and animals so long ago? Scientists, called archaeologists, study the past. They have methods of learning about early humans. They collect artifacts or objects made or used by humans. These include tools, pottery, bones, and shells. These artifacts provide clues to how people lived in the past. For example, stones shaped into points were used for hunting. Other carved stones were used for scraping the hides of animals to make clothing or other items. Archaeologists can even tell what plant foods people ate by examining the remains of seeds. Archaeologists also use artifacts to figure out where people came from. They have noticed the same types of ancient stone tools in Asia and in the Americas. They have found that some Asian peoples and Native Americans share some physical traits. For archaeologists, these findings point to Asia as the homeland of the first Americans. Living in Texas, how did the earliest Texans live? The first people may have reached Texas around 11,000 BC. A recent find at Buttermilk Creek near Austin could push that date back about another 2,500 years. The exact date is not certain. However, archaeologists have learned much about how the earliest Texans lived. Scientists call the era from prehistoric time until 1528, when Europeans arrived, natural Texas and its people. Archaeologists know that the earliest Native Americans used the plants and animals found in Texas for thousands of years. The earliest Texans were hunter gatherers. They lived in small groups and, as nomads, did not stay in one place for long. They followed and hunted herds of large animals such as mammoth and giant bison. A throwing stick called an atlatl made their spears go farther and with more force. After a few thousand years, the mammoth and giant bison died out. Then people hunted smaller animals such as deer and the small bison. Question, make sure you fill this in. How did the hunter gatherers live? Tell us about it there. The earliest Texans ate nuts such as walnuts, pecans, and acorns. They ate fruit like prickly pear fruit, plums, and grapes. In drier regions, early people ate the dried centers of agave bulbs. They also used agave leaves to make baskets and sandals. When plants in an area were used up, these gatherers would move on. The earliest Texans lived in rock shelters that were naturally cut into the sides of canyons. Such shelters were common in southwest Texas. People cooked and worked toward the front of the shelter. They placed beds toward the back. The shelters were near streams or rivers where fresh water was available. Around AD 600 to 700, Native Americans in Texas began using new kinds of technology. One new technology was the bow and arrow. It let hunters deliver smaller, sharper points with greater force than a hand thrown spear. Another new technology was pottery. Pots were created by shaping mud containers. The containers were then heated at very high temperatures to harden them. The containers were used for cooking or storage. By about 80 1200, agriculture or farming was common. Native Americans now grew their own plants for food instead of gathering what they could find. They could settle to tend their crops. They no longer had to move around in search of food. Terms you need to know, here's your vocabulary, and there will be a skyward quiz on your vocabulary. Nomad, a person who moves from place to place. Archaeologist, a scientist who studies the physical remains of the past. Artifact, any object made or used by humans, such as tools, pottery, bones, and shells. Hunter gatherer, a person who lives by hunting and gathering food rather than growing it. Available, nearby, and ready to use. Technology, the application of scientific discoveries to practical use. And here's your 5 questions. Which of the following technologies resulted in Native Americans being able to settle in one place? D. Agriculture. Number 7. What was the main reason early Texans moved from place to place? C. To follow grazing animals. Number 8. How do archaeologists know about Native Americans who lived in Texas around 1100 BC? 11,000 BC. A. By studying their artifacts. 9. Approximately when did Native Americans in Texas begin to practice agriculture? A. AD 1200. 10. What did the earliest Texans use to make items such as baskets? A. The leaves of agave plants. I'm going to go back to the beginning real quick. So we learned why the early people of Texas were nomads. They had to follow the grazing animals so that they could eat. They hunted them. And the changes in technology that changed their lifestyle, they were able to start growing and farming and using agriculture so that they could plant things and stay in one place.